that, we will go ahead and get started. So welcome to math class. You've probably seen this on camera, but not here in person. What your typical days will look like is you'll have the first 20 minutes out there with Denise from 8:20 to 8:40. We're going to use that time to really focus in on any questions you guys have, like maybe doing some extra practice on material that you three struggled with a little bit more. And then if you have like any homework questions you weren't able to do outside of class, she could always work with you on those. Traditionally, I will have the paper copy of the notes for you guys when you're here with me. At the top, there's always going to be review questions for you guys to work on. You all have had me last quarter, so you know this class moves very fast. So we'll use those review questions to help maintain everything you've learned and hopefully keep you from forgetting some of the stuff you learned. And then some of those review questions will kind of help us nicely introduce that day's lesson. This is the first lesson for today, so there was nothing to review. This is actually more of a review lesson from some of the stuff you guys learned in developmental math last quarter. So hopefully this will feel nice and easy since it's just like a summary lesson of stuff you guys learned and not too much new. Okay? Questions for me? All right, then I will get us started. At the beginning of, I'm going to skip that since you did that with Denise. At the beginning of each lesson, there's going to be an objective. That is just a short sentence that says what we're going to learn. There's also a space on your paper for you to write that down. It says today's objective. In this lesson, we're going to add, subtract, multiply, and divide integers. You can write those words. You can write the symbols for add, subtract, multiply, and divide. If that's how you think it is. These are for you to keep. I should say that too. As you're writing that word integer down, you have seen that word before. What is an integer?
Set of positive and negative numbers.
Ooh, you're sounding like a math teacher. I love it. And that is the first thing we're going to write. It is the set of positive and negative numbers. So we heard this word a lot when we were learning how to do math with negative numbers. And since negative numbers are not always one of people's favorite things to do, that's where we're focusing on today, is just reviewing all four of those operations: add, subtract, multiply, and dividing negatives. I had said it back in developmental math, but I'll say it again. Negative numbers are not going anywhere. If you think about like a number line, negative numbers are half of the numbers we have in math. So as we move forward into like pre-algebra and algebra stuff, you're going to see negative numbers all the time. So we really want to focus on getting you guys confident with how you do math with negative numbers. Make sense? So you'll hear me say integers a lot in this lesson. I'll also say sign a lot. If I'm saying the word sign, that just means if the number is positive or negative. So I could say the sign of these numbers is positive. The sign of these numbers is negative. Where do we see negative numbers in real life? There's three of you, so you each give me some.
Like on like Chase app, like you know how like you go to the NTM and you draw out like $100 and you
So I hear you saying money, and you're even giving me a specific situation with money. You're saying like if you withdraw money.
Temperatures.
Temperatures. It is about to be negative temperatures. You got one you can think of?
Oh, I was saying that too.
You're going to say temperatures? Anything else we can think of?
I think gas probably. Like you know how it goes up, like you know how you fill it and it's like half tank, 3/4, and then it goes down again. Like, no, it doesn't count.
So are you saying like the idea of going down?
Yeah, it's like.
I'm going to write that down. Like if we're talking about something going down or like a loss of something in a word problem, you would use a negative.
So it's like a temperature for like an engine.
Weather, temperature. I'm going to add one height, and maybe this is just the Floridian in me. But growing up in Florida, when you're talking about like the heights of lands, here in the Midwest, You don't see like negative heights, or maybe not height, but like ground level is what I should be saying. But in Florida at sea level, what height would we say if something's at sea level? What number would that be? 0. So you can have stuff below sea level, and if you're going below sea level, if sea level is 0, below sea level would be negative. So one of the things I got really excited about when I moved here is because you all have basements. In Florida, you can't have basements. Do you know why?
Drugs, I think.
What?
Drugs? No?
Drugs?
Like, you know how they hide things in the basement? Drugs? That's what they're famous for California, right?
I don't know anything about drugs. I was just going to say, in Florida, you can't have basements because you would get into below sea level. A lot of houses are like only a few feet above sea level. So if you dug underground, you're getting below sea level, you're getting into water and maybe drugs. The first thing, oops, this is going to be annoying walking on this. The first thing I want to review real quick is just comparing integers. So we said integers are positive and negative numbers. When you are comparing any type of number, integers or future stuff in algebra, we use something called an inequality. What do inequalities say? If I'm using an, let me say that a different way. If I'm using an inequality sign, why would I want that?
So that one is bigger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what I hear you saying with bigger and smaller is they're not the same. You use equations or equal signs when two things are the same amount, like 2 plus 2 and 4. Those are the same. But if you got something that's bigger or smaller, those two amounts are, I'm going to write unequal in WLA. Maybe this one? There we go. Unequal amounts. And I was saying we've got like bigger and smaller. There are two inequality signs we're going to use. The less than sign, what's that one look like? Yep. Do you want to explain what you're doing with your arm?
I'm showing the sign.
I've had students show me a trick with your arms. If you're using your not your left arm, your left arm, left for less. So if you make like an inequality sign with your arm, that's the less than sign. And then it's just like the other one, right? The other arm is your greater than. And then the greater than sign is going to go the opposite way. Again, growing up in Florida, I learned these are gators, alligators' mouths eating the larger number. I've got 2 questions below for you to practice these signs with. They are both about money, which was one of the examples y'all told me is where you can see negative numbers. For each of these, it asks for you to write a statement using inequality signs. What I mean is if these two numbers were like 4 and 5, I want you to write 4 and 5 and then an inequality sign between them. Okay? All right. I'll give you guys like 30 seconds. Go ahead and try these two now. And I'm going to give you this marker. Could I possibly interest you to go up and write one down?
Sure.
I'm going to give them a couple more seconds. Start off class telling you you won't be on camera, but then I make you go up to the board. All right, gentlemen, take another 10 seconds. Let me check yours. Yep, yours is perfect. All right, so Francis is going to go ahead and show us the first one. And tell us what you've got written down there.
$1 is greater than negative $100.
Now, why is that?
Because this you have no money in the bank, minus that amount, and this you have the dollar in the bank.
Yeah. So some people look at that and say like 100's so big, it must be more. But you're emphasizing negative means you don't have that money.
Right.
I'm going to have you hold on that, and then I'm just going to clean at the end of class.
Okay.
Gentlemen, who's going to do that second one for me? Thank you so much, Carla. Nice. Now tell us what you've got there.
-1 is greater than -100.
Why is that true?
It's because -1 is closer to 0.
Ooh, nice. Does anyone think about that second one a different way?
You still don't have the money in the bank, but negative one would be closer to being
At least you don't
put
want
in the
$100.
bank, and then
Yeah.
it's better than not being negative $100.
Yeah. So this time, both of them are money you don't have. He's saying it's closer to 0, and you're thinking of it as it's closer to being even. Right? This idea of, well, -1 means I only owe $1. -100 means I owe $100. This one here especially is one, I don't remember who missed what, but this type of question is one that a lot of students missed last quarter. And I get why, because you're looking at it and you're like, okay, they're both negative, but 100 is bigger than 1, so it must be true that -100 is bigger, but it's actually the opposite. And I think students are much more likely to get this right when you're thinking about money or temperature. You're making it in like a real life situation instead of just thinking -1 and -100. Now both of these, we wrote them this way. There is another way you could have written it. If you put -100 first and 1 second, what inequality sign would go there?
Less than.
And same thing down here. So it depends on the order you put those two numbers. You might have had this, I might have written this on the board, and they say the same thing. Questions on the comparing? Okay. Then we can go ahead and get into some of the math. So we said we were going to add, subtract, multiply, and divide integers. I'm going to start us off with some word problems that will relate back to adding and subtracting integers. We've got this first one here, says the temperature outside when Denise went to bed was 2 degrees. Overnight, the temperature dropped 5 degrees. What is the temperature in the morning? For each of these, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to write an equation to represent it, and then I'm also going to answer the question. For this first one here, what would my equation look like?
So -5.
Yep. Why are you saying -5?
Because 2 degrees and it's just temperature dropped, so
Mhm.
5 degrees.
Yep. So that's telling me I'm subtracting. What would that temperature be then if it's starting at 2 and dropping 5? -3. So we could say it would be -3. I'm just going to put that there. -3 degrees. You're going to notice these next two here are very, very similar. I've just changed stuff around a little bit. So for the second one, we've got the temperature outside when Denise went to bed was -2 degrees. Overnight, the temperature dropped 5 degrees. What is the temperature in the morning? For this one here, give me the equation first.
-2 minus, what's that little thing called? I don't know what's it called.
Oh, parentheses? Mhm.
5 right here? No.
-7.
Wait, I'm still working on my equation. So I got -2 minus.
I'm wrong.
5.
-2 minus 5.
Okay. Could we put parentheses there? Does that say the same thing as this?
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Do we need parentheses?
No.
I think that's why we're like, wait, just kidding. So we've got -2 minus 5. Francis, I think I heard you say an answer,
-7.
which gives us -7 degrees. And this last one here, we've got the temperature outside when Denise went to bed was -2 degrees. Overnight, the temperature rises 5 degrees. What is the temperature in the morning?
So -2 plus 5,
Why are we switching to addition?
because it raised up.
Yep, it says rises, so that's telling me we're adding. And then this last one here, -2 plus 5, 3. So in a second, we're going to talk about the two different ways you can figure out these answers. I'm curious which ways you all are thinking when you were getting these answers. What were you all doing?
I was looking at the clues.
You're looking at the clues?
Yeah, like rise or decrease, drop, or
Mhm.
another one decrease or something like that.
Yep. So you're thinking of like what those words
Yeah.
mean in the situation. What about you two? Aya? How are you figuring out the answers for each of these?
Like I was adding.
So are you going back to those rules then?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is you both are alluding to the two different ways we can figure these out. Is we've got rules, And then you can think about like with the number line, what like dropping or rising on a number line would look like. So the first one I want to review is how you would do these with a number line. So I've got those 3 equations you guys just told me. One way you could think of it is, especially with temperatures, we've seen thermometers before. It's like the same idea with a number line. It's just like your thermometer was turned sideways. So something like 2 minus 5, if the temperature was starting at 2 and the temperature is dropping 5, what would I want to do?
You just count back with like 1, 2.
Yeah.
It's like jumping.
Yep. I'm going to jump back 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we get that answer of -3. Something like -2 minus 5.
So it goes to -2.
Mhm.
Then jump back to -2. You have 5 on it. Go
Yep.
back.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you get that -7. Carlos is our number line expert, so someone from this table. What about that last one?
Back from -2.
Uh-huh.
So you're right.
Why am I going right?
Because it was 2.
Yep, because we're adding this time. So that would leave us with 3. I really like the number line, and there's some reasons why. What are some strengths of doing these problems on the number line? What's some good things about it?
Yeah. Makes it easy.
Makes it easy? How does it make it easy?
So like when you have a problem,
Mhm.
it's like -2, it's really easy. You just go to the -2. If that's like an equal sign, it's like
Yeah.
add or minus, you can just go for it.
So you can see what's happening with the numbers. I like it because I think the biggest things that can confuse students with these problems is, well, that's a minus sign, but our number is getting bigger. Or this is an addition sign, but our number is getting smaller. That part can be confusing for students, so I like it because you can see what's happening. If I'm using that number line and just counting around on it, it makes sense to me why it's -7. What is the downside of this number line here?
The downward?
What's the downside? What's the problem with using a number line for everything? Or is there no problem? Is this just like the magical answer to any negative numbers?
Well, some because you can't do like 52 like bigger numbers.
Yeah.
Just sample like a little 1 to 10.
Yeah, exactly. You're noticing all I could fit on the board right now was -10 to 10. If I gave you like, instead of 2 minus 5, like 203 minus 57. Do we want to, you're already shaking your head now. You could, I don't want to say you can't because someone would try to prove me wrong. You could do this on a number line, right? But we don't want to do that. So I like the number line because you can see what's happening. You can make sense why your answer is negative or positive, but we don't want to have to use it for every problem. So from this, we can come up with rules that you can use anytime you're adding or subtracting negatives. You guys might already know these rules. You were telling me you were using the rules earlier. For the first one, it says if both numbers have the same sign,
Equal.
what are you going to do with the two numbers?
Yeah, good of them.
Mm-hmm. You add the two numbers and then well, they're the same sign, so we don't have to keep the bigger sign. We can just keep the sign. We had 3 problems we've been looking at. Which one of these problems would I want to use this rule for?
-2, -1.
Yeah, here they were both a negative, so we would want to add the numbers and then keep the sign, keep that negative sign there. And notice -7 is what we got earlier. That second rule we've got is if the numbers have different signs. Mm-hmm. You subtract and then you,
Keep the sign of the bigger number.
yep. You could say bigger number, larger number, higher number. I've heard it all. So using this second rule here, for something like 2 minus 5, what would we want to do?
Subtract.
Yep. Subtract and then,
Add
Keep
the
the right out is bigger.
yep. Our negative, or sorry, our 5 was negative, our 5's larger, so we're keeping the sign of that larger number. And then over here, it's the same numbers, but the signs are flipped. They're still different, so we're still subtracting. And then keeping the sign of that bigger number means our answer would be positive. Questions on, we spent a lot of time talking about these 3 problems in a lot of different ways. Questions on any of these 3? On the rules, on the number line? Okay. Then below, you've got some practice problems to try. I'm going to start off, let's just do 1 through 4 first. You thinking about that middle one? Number 3?
Oh,
That's good. Nice.
good on that one.
You can think of it, it'll fit on this number line if you want to do it that way, or if you wanted to use a rule, which one would you want?
Well, I'm gonna add.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Nice. All right. Tell me 1 through 4 real quick. Number 1, we got,
1.
woo, number 2. This is the one people were skipping over. Didn't like this one. What do we need to do for this one?
So you add 5 plus 5 would be
Mhm.
10. You stay with the same sign would be
Yep.
negative.
If you were thinking about this on a number line, that would be like a starting at -5. Don't let the adding a -5 confuse you. You're starting at a -5 and then you're doing another -5. So you'd be going back 5. If you turned it into money in your head, this is like, I owe you $5 and I owe you another $5. So I owe you a total of $10. However you want to think of it. And then the last one, -17 plus 17. Nice. For number 5, you guys have seen these before because you had developmental math with me. We've got use an inequality to compare the following. Justify the reason you chose that inequality sign. Inequality, remind me what that is again. Yep. So you're going to be using one of those signs right here. With the justify, that just means explain how you figured that out. You can't just look at this and be like, okay, it's going to be this sign. There's something you have to do to figure it out. So tell me what you did to figure that out. I'm going to give you about a minute to do this, and then I'm going to ask you all for some answers. Yep. And I might say one more thing there, so you get those 2 numbers. And then how did you figure out that sign there, that inequality sign? Mm-hmm. I'm gonna have you look at those numbers again. 1 we need to change. 1 is good, 1 we need to change.
I don't know how to explain it.
So I see you did some stuff over here. You could just explain it by telling me what you did.
So I did -4. So -4, I went to rise up to 5, and I got 1.
Mm-hmm.
In 6, I minus. What?
You're right.
Just going back to
Mhm.
9 is going to be -3.
Mm-hmm. But then how did you get that?
Oh, the sign, because 1 is bigger than -3.
Yep. Yep.
Just like that?
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
See what you put last. What each one equals? Okay. Can I have someone volunteer to come up and tell us what they said? For the Justify, don't worry about writing it all down, but if you just want to like read us what you wrote.
Like, I just thought one is bigger than -2. Does that count? Or no?
Yep. Do you want to share what you did over here too? You want to go up?
Like, just like.
Teacher Carlos? Yeah. Woo!
Alright, so -4 plus 5, so -4, I went back. What did I do?
You started at -4, and then
Oh yeah, so I did -4, so you raised up to 5, that's gonna be +1. It doesn't matter the sign, because you know it's +1.
And I'm glad you said that because that's something I hadn't mentioned yet. If it's positive, we don't need to worry about that
And
plus
after
sign.
that, 6, so you go 6. After that, you go back a 9, that's gonna be -3.
Mm-hmm.
And that's gonna be -3. So 1 is bigger than -3.
Yep. How do we know 1 is bigger than -3?
Because, like, let's say this, if I got $1 in my bank account, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can buy myself like a honey bun that costs 99 cents, I can own it.
Uh-huh.
And like, if I don't got no money, like let's say this, if I get it like a chocolate milk and a honey bun, and I got no money in my bank account, I use my debit card, and I have -$3, so I owe the bank -$3.
Love it. So you're turning it into money.
Oh,
It's all a hypothetical situation. Questions for Carlos? I think you did a good job. I can really hear your thinking when you're talking about like going forward and going back. I can tell what you're doing to get those answers, which I love. This was all, whoops, I lied. There's one more. Let's do this last one together. We've got poor Steve. It says poor Steve checks his bank account on Monday and sees that his account balance is negative $125. What does a balance of negative $125 mean?
Doesn't have it in the bank.
Yeah. Means if Carlos had negative $125, he wants to buy that honey bun, he can't do it. It means he's got no money. So we could say he has no money. You could say he owes $125, however you think of it, but it's money he doesn't have. That second part says Steve deposits $80 on Tuesday. What is his new balance on Tuesday? What would I need to do to figure out that answer?
So negative 125 minus
Yes.
80.
And tell me why we're subtracting 80.
Because he deposited $80. Like he put the money in and he got less that he owns. Or no?
So let's pause there. I heard you're saying he has the $80.
Yeah,
He's
he has
putting
it,
that
yeah,
in.
Yeah.
What's that going to mean for my equation?
So
Doesn't have to be Carlos. Someone else can help me out.
It's still gonna be negative.
If he's depositing
Yeah,
$80,
yeah, he still owes money on the bank.
It's gonna be 80 minus 125.
but look at my equation right now.
It's gonna be positive.
What's going to be positive?
The answer?
It's gonna be
That is
the 80. That was
125.
There you go.
There we go.
So
If I had, let's pause real quick because I can tell you're dying to give me an answer. If I had negative 125 minus 80, what story could go with that? He's got a balance of negative $125 and then he,
$80 plus 80, positive 80.
what would minus 80 mean? Plus 80 means he's depositing $80. A minus $80?
Because he took more out than what he should.
yeah.
Yeah, that's like he spent another $80. He already is in debt, and then he's going to spend even more money. This, what would happen with our answer here? Are we getting a bigger negative, a smaller negative, a positive? Bigger negative, because you're going even more into debt. So I think the reason you guys were dying to tell me minus 80 is because what do we need to do here?
So you just put 125 minus 80. That's what I.
We're going to have to subtract. I'm going to do that subtraction off to the side here. What do we get when we subtract those?
45.
hmm
Oh, it's still negative.
Why is it still negative 45?
$45.
Because he owes $45. Add on to that. Why else is it still negative?
Did it deposit the whole 125?
Yeah. Nice. So you know he would have to deposit 125 to be even, to be zero. He didn't deposit enough, so he's still in debt. He's still negative. And then that last one, Steve deposits another $80 on Wednesday. What am I going to do to get my answer for that
So
one?
it's gonna be negative 45 plus 80.
hmm
Literally $25.
Tell me how you're getting 25.
Because 45 take away 80 is 25.
So we're subtracting. When we subtract, what's 80 minus 40?
Wait, a minute.
Uh-huh. So then if 80 minus 40 is 40, subtract another 5 and it's going to give you
$35.
$35. There you go. That time, is it positive, negative?
Positive now.
Why is it positive?
Because he has money now.
Yeah, that's money he has. So I'm going to put dollar signs in here for these two. Okay. I think you guys are really great with these negatives when it comes to adding and subtracting, especially when we're talking about money. Questions on any of these? Okay. Now we can get into the multiplying and dividing. For the next part, just like adding and subtracting, we've got two rules we use when we multiply and divide. The first one says if you multiply or divide two numbers with the same signs, the answer is multiplying or dividing. I know we're shifting gears. Multiply or divide two numbers with the same signs, the answer is I'm looking for a sign, so positive or negative, which
Positive.
positive. And when you multiply or divide two numbers with different signs, negative. That is always, always, always. I think the biggest mistake students make when it comes to multiplying or dividing is they're still thinking about earlier the whole look at the sign of the bigger number. You are only doing that for addition and subtraction. For these, it does not matter which number is bigger. If they're the same signs, the answer is positive. Different signs, the answer is negative. So using that information, there are these first four problems I'm going to have you look at. Go ahead and try 1 through 4 for me. We'll talk about 5, 6, and 7 in a moment. Okay. Number 1, tell me what we're getting.
Is it positive 12?
Tell me how you're getting positive 12.
Because, like, the 4 doesn't have the negative sign. If it was a negative sign, if it was, like, same, like it's like same as division, like, or subtracting. No, not really.
So I'm looking and
It's
I'm
like,
seeing.
Like, one equal, like, let's say negative 3 times negative 4, right? Like, the negative with the negative stay the same, right?
Check your rules again.
Or no?
Here, what's true about our signs here?
Is negative 12?
They're different signs,
Yeah.
which means negative 12. I think you're thinking back to what we were doing with addition and subtraction, which is why I think it's hard when we shift gears to multiplying and dividing. The next one, negative 20 divided by negative 2.
10.
Mhm.
Positive.
Why is it positive?
Because they're two same note.
Yep. Two negatives.
Yeah.
Number 3, this is where I made the math a little more fun. What do you get when you multiply negative 301 times negative 9?
Is it 2,709?
It is 2,709. And you read that perfectly too. That last one, negative 216 divided by 4. We can.
4.
You're so close.
The negative 54.
Why is it negative?
Because they're different signs.
Yep. So this is reviewing some of that like long by hand multiplication and division we did with some of the stuff we learned about negative numbers. I am going to do these last 3 all together, I think. For these, it's still related to multiplication and division, but I've changed the way I've written them. You guys have seen problems like this before, but the further along we get in pre-algebra, the less and less you're going to see that multiplication and division sign, the more you're going to see these 3. This first one here, what does that mean?
Is that a division?
It is. That is the same as division, which means this says negative 4 divided by 2, which is going to equal
2.
negative 2. Somebody else for this next one, you got 2 numbers next to each other in parentheses. That means,
Multiplication.
nice. You want to do that multiplication for us? What would that equal?
15.
Mm-hmm. And then this last one, that little tiny dot.
Multiplication.
Yep.
Multiplication.
Multiplication. So negative 6 times 7.
42.
Negative 42. I'm going to skip that last problem on your page and go down to the last rule. The last rule we have is what you do when you're subtracting a negative. So when you have something like this, and I think this is what you were thinking of earlier when you were mentioning parentheses. If you were subtracting a negative number, what are we going to have to do there? Do you remember?
People told me that you can flip around negative 4 minus 3, right? Negative 4 minus 3, something like that? No, you can't, right?
That doesn't mean the same thing as negative 4 minus 3. The reason I've got this rule at the end of this lesson, before we always did it with adding and subtracting, is because now you know something about multiplying negatives. We just learned that a negative times a negative is
Positive.
a positive. So for this right here, you can think of it that way. A negative times a negative is a positive. This is the same thing as adding. Anytime you see 2 negative signs like that, 2 negative signs right next to each other, that is the same thing as adding. So 3 minus negative 4 is the same thing as 3 plus 4, which is 7. I like to do that exactly what I did here on my paper. I like to just make one big plus sign so I'm not looking at those negatives anymore. So you can think of it that way, or this can just be an additional rule you remember. But I like using that fact that 2 negatives multiplied together give you a positive. I think subtracting a negative isn't one we see a lot in word problems. What would it mean in real life if you were subtracting a negative?
When you subtract into negative,
Mm-hmm. Not just subtracting a number, but subtracting a negative number.
like money, no?
So let's go back to money. What does negative 4 mean if you're thinking of money?
Yeah, you own the bank money, like negative $4.
Yeah,
right?
negative 4 means you have a debt of $4.
Yeah.
So what does taking away negative 4 mean?
It's like, like you don't own that money.
Yeah,
Right?
it's like taking away a debt.
Yeah.
If I had $3 and the bank told me you owe $4, that would mean I'm in negative, right? But if the bank decided to take away that debt instead of me owing them $4, that's $4 I get to keep. Since I get to keep, it's positive, and that's why we're getting $7. Originally, if it was I had $3 and I owe $4, I'm going negative. But if I get to keep that $4, that's more money I have. That's why we're adding the numbers. I think money, and you guys were already so good with the money stuff. I think money is the easiest way to think of this in like a real world situation. That or finding like a difference between two different numbers. The last thing I'm going to have us do is there are 3 problems using what we just learned up here. I'm thinking let's do the first 2 together and then I'll have you try this last one. Sounds like a plan? This first one here, tell me what I would want to do for 4 minus negative 64.
Just sign the positive.
Yep.
Plus,
So if I wanted to write it again, I could write,
4 plus 64.
yeah, or 64 plus 4. That's also correct.
68.
Yeah. The second one here's got a lot of negative numbers. Be careful. What's that one going to do? Or what's that one going to say?
Negative
Mhm.
3 plus -1.
We agree?
So that would be negative 4.
Wait. Look at that one again. There's something I got to change.
Oh, negative 1.
Negative 1.
Uh-huh.
Negative 1.
Yeah. We're saying both of those negatives is where my plus sign is. So we just need negative 3 plus 1.
So that would be negative 2.
Yep. Last thing I'm going to have you do is put down an answer for number 3 on your paper. Once I've checked it, you are good to go. Bye, people at home.